What's up, everybody? Welcome to round number 2 of the rapid event in the Zurich Chess Challenge. Round number 1 saw a surprising, not the result, but a surprising destruction by Levon Aronian at the hands of Vishy Anand. Levon Aronian was checkmated in less than 20 moves after e4, e5, a thing we do not see often. Round number 2 is going to start in a couple minutes. Let's have a look at the live feed and see if we can already see the players arriving, getting a coffee. I've seen Anish Giri on there earlier, but it looks like he's back into hiding. The games we have this round is Kramnik against Aronian. Aronian with another black. Let's see if he makes it to move 20 this time around. Giri against Anand. Vishy must be in high spirits after winning his first round game there. We see him all smiles. We're black against Anish Giri, never easy. One of the best prepared guys in the business, Anish. Then again, as with all the players that are active in the candidates, we don't know how much of his openings he really wants to show in this event. We have Shirov against Nakamura. Shirov not a regular anymore in super tournaments, Mr. Fire on board, but he was one of the very best for a long time. I've already talked about the match that he won against Vladimir Kramnik, I believe in 1998, which in theory allowed him to play a match against Garry Kasparov. That match never happened, and Kramnik took the title from Kasparov instead. He's been holding himself so far, did well in the opening Blitz event yesterday, and drew comfortably, even though he was white, so I'm not sure how happy he is. In the first round against Kramnik's Berlin, he's going to have a double white, and he's going to face one of the fastest men in the business, Hikaru Nakamura, who did not have a great game in the first round, but managed to save a very dubious position against Anish Giri. There we see Lubomir Lubojevic, the former world-class player from Yugoslavia, lives in Linares and always a well-liked guest at any super chess tournament. I don't know who that man is. We have Kathy Rogers taking pictures. Shirov has arrived, Aronian's there, Vishy's seated. Whom are we waiting for? Kramnik taking a little nap between the games. Anish Giri I've seen earlier, he's awake, and Hikaru Nakamura is not yet in the picture. In case you're wondering what the fourth board is doing on stage, that's a match between Boris Gelfand and Alexander Morozevich, which you can also check out on Chess24. I'll check in with it occasionally. The first game ended in a draw, and I believe this is their second and final game, where we see Anish Giri arriving, sitting down to face Vishy Anand. Anish Giri hasn't been doing great so far, did manage to win this position in the first game, but it's a tricky setup for all the guys in the candidates. Of course, this is a big event, but it doesn't compare to the candidates in terms of what's at stake for them, because in the candidates they can actually qualify for a match against the world champion. Vishy's done that. Well, he's played 2 matches against Magnus Carlsen. We'll see if he manages to pull off another surprise victory in this year's candidates tournament. For Anish Giri, the 21-year-old, it's his first time in the circuit. So he could say, it's my first time, it's not my circuit, I'm just here to learn. But I do think he has different ambitions. He wants to win that thing as well, just as everybody. It's one of the most even candidates tournaments that we've had. There's no clear favorite. I've mentioned, I think Aronian, who had the burden of being a favorite in the last 2 events, didn't come through, maybe because of nerves, maybe because of something else. This burden has been removed from him. To me, he has a good chance, but he hasn't looked stellar in his first games. And while we're waiting, let's have a very quick look at what happened to him in round number 1 against Vishy. Sort of an innocuous opening. Bishop e6, knight f5, and here Aronian played the move bishop c4, which according to the computer was quite risky already. He should have gone for the setup he tried to get later in the game, knight b8, knight bd7, to reinforce this soft spot on f6. He took and went king h7, typical maneuver, but after queen f3, he decided to go knight b8 to now shore up his defenses on f6, but he missed the killer blow, knight takes h6, which Vishy Anand spotted very quickly. And it's already game over on move 15. White loses a pawn with a bet, wins a pawn with a winning position if black doesn't take, so black has to take. But the problem is this king is not going to make it out alive. queen h3 check, king g6, and rook to f3, threatening this devastating check. And there's just no safe hiding spot. Aronian tried knight h5 to go back here, but then rook f5 asks some very unpleasant questions. Rook h8, not a good idea because of queen g4 check, picking up this guy. Next move, so there's absolutely nothing to do. Aronian tried knight f6 back. Now at least there's no check on g3. But trouble came from the other side. Queen h4 blitzed out by Vichy, threatening rook g5 checkmate. And if this knight goes anywhere to stop that, then queen h5 is checkmate. So Aronian resigned on move 90, but he would have been checkmated on move number 20. Let's see if we have any more such drama in round number 2. Levon Aronian with black against Vladimir Kramnik. Looks like all the players are there now. There's Hikaru Nakamura taking his seat against Alexei Shirov, the magician from Riga, they used to call him. One of my teammates in the Baden-Baden team, just as Levon Aronian and Vichy Anand. One of the stronger teams in the business, and looks like we have liftoff there. Shirov goes for e4, and Nakamura goes for the French defense. Nakamura can play everything. Like most top players, his main weapon probably is the Berlin. And like all the other guys in the candidates, he will have some ideas of not showing his main openings. So it could be some reverse psychology going on. Maybe he plays the French because he doesn't want to play in the candidates, or he plays it because he wants to play in the candidates but doesn't want people to know. You never know to what like third level thinking these guys are going. But my best guess is you won't see many openings that they will actually employ in the candidates. Let's have a look at the opening in Giri Anand. Another more or less innocuous one. The Juco piano, I haven't seen Giri do that much. Well, he's played it once or twice. I recall some tiebreak games against Wesley So. And Wesley So himself has recently popularized it. He came up with a new plan of going c3, then a4, and bring this knight via a3 to c2, which people have taken note of. Magnus Carlsen copied this plan in Vaikanze to defeat, who was it? Mickey Adams. So maybe Giri is following that trend, but it's also pretty safe a guess that this is not what he wants to do next month. On camera we see the match between Gelfand and Morozevich, little 2-game match. And there's a question, maybe I'm wrong, the wizard from Riga was originally Tal, but I've heard Shirov being called the magician from Riga as well. But yeah, fair enough. I'm not sure he's earned that nickname away from the great Mikhail Tal. He's taken that nickname away from him. My favorite chess book, Life and Games of Mikhail Tal. If you haven't read it, check it out by all means. Shirov is from Oz. I haven't watched Oz all that much. Probably should. We have a curious opening in the Kramnik-Aronian game. Not knight f3, g3. That's pretty much what Kramnik does these days. He's not playing in the candidates, so he can play his main openings. And he's played a lot of Raties in the last year or two. Aronian goes for one of the most solid setups, e6, d5, knight f6, e6, bishop e7. He's willing to transpose to the Catalan, d4, short castle, c4, dc4, where he's been doing well with black. If you want to know more, check out my recent video series on the topic. But Kramnik doesn't feel like entering the Catalan, goes for d3, showing his intention to play a King's Indian attack with e4. Here the main move is c5, and after e4, knight c6. Many discussions have been held recently. Giri beat Nakamura in this in London, but Aronian has his own way of playing this position. He goes knight c6, which looks a bit funny at first sight. We don't like blocking our c-pawn, but it will make sense next move after he's played e6, e5. If white goes e4, for example, e5 would come, black would occupy the center, and he would have a Pirt's defense, 2 tempi down, but since it's not the most aggressive of setups, it's still a playable position for black. Kramnik doesn't want to allow that, and therefore he goes d3, d4, immediately adjusting to the black knight being on c6. This would make a lot of sense if black could answer with c5. c5 is not a legal move here. Therefore Aronian switches plans, goes for knight to e4, playing to establish that knight on e4 with f5. That's what happens, c3, f5, and Kramnik starts maneuvering. He goes knight to e1, maneuver I quite like. I think he wants to put this knight on d3, and then probably follow up with knight f3, bishop f4, clamping down on the e5 square. In some lines, even though it's less likely, he could also go f3, chasing away this centralized black beast from the e4 square. So a bit of opening back and forth here, and after knight e1, Aronian once again shows he has no intention of waiting for white to conclude all his maneuvering, strikes immediately in the center, goes e6, e5. For this 1/2 move he has time before white goes back to occupying that square, and saying, you know what, I understand your plan, but it's my move, I'm gonna do something in the center, get rid of my weak pawn on e6, clear that square for the bishop. Let's see what happens. It's a very double-edged position. I would expect white to still go knight df3, targeting this pawn, and after e takes d, c takes d, long term white is better because he has control over that e5 square, which black can no longer control with pawns, while white in the future could establish control over this e4 square with his pawn going to f3. But short term black has active pieces, could even think about starting an attack on the king side with g5. So this is looking like it's going to be a very interesting game. Let's go back to Shirov because they have a crazy position out of the French opening. Shirov's pet line, the advanced French 3e5. It's more popular to go knight c3 or knight d2 here, but Shirov likes this line with mixed success. He's lost a recent game to my student Rasmus Swane in the German Bundesliga, so there this opening didn't treat him well, but he's also had a lot of impressive wins and interesting battles here. Queen b6, one of the main lines, together with bishop to d7. a3 might look strange, but the idea is to prepare b4 to grab space on the queen side. Knight to h6. The old way of playing this position is to play c4, locking the queen side up, but knight h6 is a more modern approach. This knight wants to go to f5 to help, and Shirov doesn't let it live. After b4, c takes d, he chops it off. The other main line, which Shirov has plenty of experience with as well, something like this with very unclear play. But this time around he takes, which I thought was not supposed to be critical in this position. I thought current thinking was that black with the two bishops and the half-open f-file and a potential f6 later gets enough counterplay for his double pawns and weakened pawn structure. But clearly Shirov knows this stuff, plays the move rook to a2, also not the very first move that comes to mind. But it is important to activate this rook to potentially fight along the c-file. Knight c3 runs into knight takes b4, which explains why you don't play the most natural move here. Then after a takes b, bishop takes b4, followed by rook c8, black will win his material back. Therefore rook a2, slightly strange looking move, but all theory. Rook to g8, intending to come to g4 and to e4, which is stopped by h3. Nakamura goes h5, planning to activate his bishop along this long diagonal, or longish. It's not the longest diagonal on the board, but in this case it's longer than this one, where it would stare at the e5 pawn. g3, I'm not sure if that's intending to fianchetto this bishop, or if it's just a general positional move against h4, or in order to develop the bishop somewhere else without having g2 hanging. h4 directly, very aggressive. You could also play bishop h6, but h4 is an interesting move. If knight takes, then d4 would be on priest, so that's not a good idea. And gh4 just cripples the white pawns, and after bishop h6, white would not enjoy his extra pawn all that much. Therefore, Shirov went with g4, once again trying to keep this rook boxed in, and Nakamura continues bishop e7, defending his pawn on h4 with a weird position. As I said earlier, I believe this line is supposed to be fine for black, and I still believe so now. Nakamura wants to follow up with f6, busting the position open. He doesn't want to castle queenside just yet because he doesn't want to determine the position of his king, so white could start an attack against it. And instead wants to keep the king in the center for now at least and see how white reacts. I'm not sure what Shirov should do, probably a developing move like bishop to e2. And I would expect Nakamura to add more fuel to the flames by going f6. We'll see. That is going to be a very sharp game. Kramnik-Aronian is a very offbeat position. You don't see this many times at the highest level after 10 moves. I slightly prefer white because I always prefer white when black has a pawn on f5. I always think long term this king is going to be weak. That's why I'm not the biggest fan of, for example, the Dutch opening. And this is a structure, let's say, I don't know, knight f7, c4, takes, something like this, that you often see out of Dutch openings where I think white is a little better, but the game has just begun. Giri Anand is a very quiet Juco piano. Giri did indeed go for this plan with a4, the Wesley So idea, tending to bring this knight via this route if it's convenient. Both sides making standard moves, and Vichy goes for bishop to e6. It's interesting that in the first game where he crushed Levon Aronian, he also got the structure bishop e6, bishop takes, f takes e, with colors reversed, and then as we've seen, he did this and won. Don't think Giri is going to allow it, but Vichy seems to enjoy playing these positions. If you dislike these double pawns, you could start with rook e8 as well, preparing bishop e6 in order to recapture with the rook here. But bishop e6 takes is on the board. Bishop e3, Giri, just like Levon, rushes to neutralize this powerful bishop. And here, I'm not sure if Vichy can continue in the same way he did play against Levon Aronian with bishop c5, because in that game Aronian has knight on c3, and if you recall, he later went on to regroup it, while in this case white does not have such troubles and could overtake the initiative here, or at least I would guess so. Just something like takes, maybe g3. The black pawns start looking a bit funny. So I would expect Anand to play a bit more quietly here, maybe go a5 to fix the queen side, or go queen e8, another typical move, preparing knight h5 or queen h5 or queen g6. Roughly equal position. I always slightly prefer white if nothing direct happens, because these pawns could be a long-term weakness, but I think that's more of a style question than an objective assessment. Taking a breather here to try to figure out what's going on. Alexei Shirov seems to be doing the same thing. He's taking his time here for his next move, while Nakamura has been blitzing, is 10 minutes up on the clock. Probably Nakamura still in his preparation, and probably when preparing for this tournament, Nakamura spotted, you know what, Shirov against the French, he always goes for this advanced variation, which doesn't have the best reputation, the e5 stuff. Maybe that's a position I would like to play against him, and he prepared this, while Shirov could not expect the French from Hikaru Nakamura, who plays all kinds of openings, but the French by no means his main weapon. Let's have a look at the game on camera, the exhibition match Morozevich against Boris Gelfand. Boris Gelfand, who played a very close World Championship match not that long ago against Vichy Anand, lost in the tie breaks, and Morozevich, not a regular in super tournaments anymore, and not that active, but fantastic player, and had a huge following in the late 90s, early 2000s. Many people were looking forward to his games. Made it as high as number 2 in the world rankings, if I'm not mistaken. Speaking of world rankings, I've pointed out, I believe on Friday's show, or I've mentioned on Friday's show, that Nakamura was number 1 in the Blitz world rankings, and I've gotten a lot of messages pointing out that he's in fact number 2. Magnus Carlsen is number 1. Apologies for that. I must have missed something. I thought Nakamura was number 1 after Carlsen lost some points in the Blitz World Championship, but Carlsen is back in the top spot. Still Nakamura, of course, one of the best Blitz and Rapid players in the world, also number 3 in the Rapid World Rankings, where Kramnik, I believe, is somewhere number 7. Vichy is also in the top 10. The other guys are out of the top 10. Remarkably, Levon Aronian, who is somewhere like number 30, maybe Rapid, not his thing, or maybe he just hasn't played that many games. Anyway, in the Gelfand-Morozevich game, they play a topical line of the Bogo Indian here. d5 is the main move, but very risky for black. After e5, knight f d7, bishop d3. White has had some success with some very sharp attacking ideas in this position. Therefore, Morozevich goes d6, which is a move that's playable with less theoretical knowledge, but black accepts a slightly worse position. Bishop e2, knight b7, queen c2, e5. And here a move that might look like a beginner's mistake, but actually shows very deep understanding on Gelfand's part. He brings his knight back to b1 because he knows that in this structure it's much better plays on c3. And he feels now that black has played sort of slowly, he does have time to regroup and put his knight on the ideal square. Very interesting idea. And this position should be a little better for white, or at least I like it for white. White has a space advantage. Morozevich played a5, hinting that he wants to lock the queenside with a4. This is a tricky decision. White would like to go b3 to stop that, but does he have the time, or will black then follow up to attack this e4 pawn very quickly and generate counterplay. The alternative would be to just ignore it, go castles, allow this a4, sorry. And that's what Gelfand has done. I'm a little intrigued. Yeah, I learned that one has to stop this and has to go b3, but as always in chess, it depends on very concrete factors of the position. Gelfand has judged that it's more important to finish his development here, allow a4. And now I'm curious to see how he wants to arrange his pieces. Bishop f4, rook d1, bishop e3, f3, or put the other rook on d1 and then see what happens. Maybe put this bishop back here. Kind of typical position, but there's a little extra spice because of this already fixed queenside. Whoever wins that game wins their mini match. I'm not 100% sure what happens in case of a draw. I believe since it's a show match, there's no tiebreaker and the match just ends with a 1-1 result, but I'm not fully sure of that. Where do we go? Let's go back to Mr. Fire on board and one of his rightful heirs when it comes to creating fire on the board, Alexei Shirov against Hikaru Nakamura. After bishop e2, Nakamura indeed did play f6, trying to undermine the center, open the position up for his bishop pair. Not too worried about having his king in the center, and Shirov did go b5. Always a committal move, chasing this knight away from c6, but weakening his queen side a little bit as well. Knight a5 would be my instinctive reaction, eyeing this square. But Nakamura decided this knight can be quite useful on f7 to cover the e5 square, and therefore he's retreated it to d8, which is probably a good decision. Curious to see what Shirov's going to do. He's played queen to d3, targeting this pawn, which I guess black should just defend with rook g7. You don't want to give that pawn up. The h4 pawn is no problem, because then black would just go fe with a discovered attack against this knight, and overtaking the center, so knight takes h4 is not a good move. I don't know, I like black's position. Looks like black's position has a lot of potential. The knight is coming to f7, putting pressure on the center. The king for now is fine where it is, but at a convenient moment it could also castle queenside, try to hide himself on b8. I believe that he's doing pretty well, Nakamura here. I've tweeted my predictions earlier. I'm always wrong with every prediction I do. But I think I predicted Nakamura to win this game with the black pieces, and I predicted Kramnik to win with the white pieces against Aronian, expecting a draw in Giri Anand. And from the positions we've got so far, I'm reasonably confident in those predictions, but I will be wrong in the end. Vishy in this quiet structure has played queen to d7, and after knight bd2 put his queen on f7. Maybe once again preparing knight h5, keeping an eye on his f-file, but white is very well developed here, so there's no real hopes of starting an attack by going knight h5, knight f4. Therefore, I think white is slightly better, but it's a tough one for me to understand, these double pawns. On the one hand, they control a lot more space in the center. This e6 pawn controls these two squares, the e5 pawn, these two squares, which is nice, but they also can't be protected by other pawns. Well, the e6 pawn can't, at least the e5 pawn is protected by this pawn. Therefore, long term, they can become a weakness. Sometimes white even goes d4, and after ed, cd, these pawns can look a little funny. So I slightly prefer white here, and I'm not sure what black should do. I still have a feeling he should fix the queen side by going a5 before white gains more space here by playing b4 or a5 himself. And yeah, it's a position that I think Giri will like. There's very little risk. It's very hard for black to organize counterplay. And he can try without risking, without having to face an attack or anything. Vishy's gone knight d7, opening the f-file up for his pieces. Hinting that this knight might go to c5, even though I don't think wants to go there immediately because it would get hit by d4 or b4. And I would expect Giri to grab some space on the queen side now, either a5 or b4. I think I prefer b4, more flexible and just ruling out this knight c5 move. And yeah, before I say for the fifth time that I slightly prefer white, I'll move on to the next game. Kramnik against Levan Aronian. Aronian withdrew his knight to g6, not to f7. Which might have some aggressive intention, but also blocks the g-pawn. This knight is a master of blocking his own pawns. Earlier blocked the c-pawn, then got out of the way, but now it blocks the g-pawn, which could be a nice pawn to throw down the board if you need to start an attack over there. I still like white's position a bit better here as well. c4 could be an interesting move. Not sure if it works though, if black just takes on d2. We have an intermediate check. Bishop takes d5 check, king h8, and just take here with an extra pawn. So that's not a good idea. And if dc4, knight c4, that's what I was talking about earlier with the knight on f7. White is a little better because the black king is weakened. Follow up with queen c2, put a rook on d1, go b3, bishop b2. Nice position. So I believe the opening battles have been won by Vladimir Kramnik, by Hikaru Nakamura, and in the Giri Anand still to be determined. I think no one won it. It's a typical position. White a tad better, but nothing too drastic has happened. Nakamura played rook g7, still has spent almost no time. You can see the clock here. He has 40 minutes, 36 seconds. He started with 40 minutes and the players get 10 seconds increment, so he hasn't spent much more time than executing his moves and pressing the clock. While Shirov has already spent 15 minutes, so Nakamura will be happy with the opening results. And takes a moment to take a little nap there. No, there he is. Looked like he was napping, but he is probably wide awake. I've seen a bit of discussion in the chat earlier about what openings are being hidden and which one aren't, and is it wise to hide your openings and so on and so forth. I'm not sure it's a conscious decision. I'm not going to play e4 or I'm not going to play the Berlin in Zurich. It's more like we've seen in the first round. Levon Aronian playing the Berlin against Vichy, but Vichy playing knight c3, which is a move I don't think we're going to see in the candidates. And then Levon not answering with the most critical knight to d4, but with bishop d6, which is a fine move and nothing you couldn't play, but I don't think he would play that in a candidates tournament. So people not choosing the most critical lines, I think, is more of an indicator than he's playing e4, e5. That means in the candidates he wants to play c5, especially in Aronian's case. I do not believe that to be the case. Kramnik has played this move c4 I was talking about. Aronian reacted with a natural move, bishop e6, developing the bishop. Kramnik took on d5. And now Aronian has to figure out if he can recapture with the bishop or if knight takes e4 is something that bothers him then. Knight takes e4, let's say f takes e. This knight doesn't have a great square, so it should probably go here, offering to exchange itself. And after knight takes, bishop takes, white is once again a little better. This pawn is a little weak, king is a little weak, queen c2 followed by rook d1 is going to come. It's not a pleasant position to play for black. So maybe Aronian has to consider the move knight takes d2, when I wouldn't be surprised if Kramnik sacrificed an exchange here. Took on e6, freeing this bishop, knight takes f1, let's say, king takes f1, queen takes. Well, white is a pawn for the exchange, nice active pieces, could bring the queen out. I think it's an interesting option, which Kramnik might take into account. No need for it, you can just go bishop takes d2, but then after bishop d5, black looks more solid than at the other lines with two pairs of minor pieces disappearing. What's going on in the playing hall, by the way? Did someone switch off the lights? Looks really dark over there. Or maybe it just got dark outside, so there's no more sunshine creeping in. Levon Aronian in deep thought, just as Vladimir Kramnik. Both sides, I believe, are calculating the consequences of knight takes d2, d takes e6. Let's see what verdict they come to. Kramnik's been playing more quickly, probably still deep in his preparation as well. Yeah, some comments that Shirov's development looks awkward. It's kind of typical for this line they've been playing. But yeah, as I've said, I believe this line is supposed to be fine for black, and that white has to play moves like rook a2 is not a good sign for this line. I'm far from being a specialist, but at some point I sort of dabbled with different openings, took a look at the French, never played it, but when I was studying this, I thought this is a pleasant line for black. And in the position they have now, after short castles, once again Nakamura could just go for long castles now on king b8, but I think he can also continue with his king in the center, just take on e5. White probably take with the knight, knight takes, and play a position like this, where I quite like black as well. 2 bishops, active pieces, this rook is doing well. No, Nakamura's won the opening battle, no question. Let's see if that converts into victory in the game. Shirov also down to half of the time he had when he started the game, while Nakamura looks like this is his first longer think. He's deciding between f takes e5, maybe long castles, or a neutral move like rook c8, even though it's not that neutral, because with rook c8 you give up the right to castle queenside, so it is committal in a sense. I would expect f takes e5 when I really like black's position. Giri Anand. Giri keeps making very solid moves. King g2, reinforcing the knight on f3. Very slightly better. I'm a little confused why Anand keeps not playing a5 and why Giri keeps allowing it. I would think that white had to gain some space on the queenside here. Once again, these positions one needs at least a doctorate in Rui Lopez / Juco piano structures, which I still don't have. Still a student. And Levon Aronian did take on d2 after carefully weighing the consequences of d takes e6. Good news for him is it's already move number 13. There's only 7 moves to go to make it till move 20. And I do believe he's an overwhelming favorite to get there. In the Gelfand-Morozevich match, Gelfand after a4 played the move bishop e3, going for natural development, not showing yet where he wishes to place his rooks. I slightly prefer white's position, but the game has only just started. One big question is, often in these structures, do you want to go knight g4 and allow this exchange? Black gets the 2 bishops, which I like, but he also allows white to exchange his, on paper, bad bishop from e2, and white has a very sound structure. Without this bishop on e2, let's say f3, whatever, bishop d7, rook a d1, feels like it's easier to play with white at the very least. So my inclination would be not to play knight g4 here, but instead something like rook e8, bishop f8. And yeah, I like white's position better. Vladimir Kramnik has a moment of truth here. Go for d takes e6. Risk playing an exchange down a position, playing for 3 results as we call it. You could lose this, you could win this, or play the much more solid bishop takes, or even queen takes d2. Bishop takes more natural. When after bishop takes d5, black has solved most of his problems. Maybe white is still a tad better because his king is a little safer. But here, with the light square bishops disappearing, it's hard to believe it's anything serious. Both Kramnik and Levon deeply in thought there. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is he gonna sacrifice the exchange or not? Objectively, I'm not sure. I feel this is critical, but that doesn't mean that I'm sure white is better here. After, let's say, I don't know how you take, let's say queen c6. This could also backfire if you don't manage to build an attack and black gains some time to develop. Here's an exchange up. So it's a very committal decision. Maybe king takes is better than queen takes, so we can bring this queen to b3 quickly. But even here after c6, whatever, queen b3, queen b6, I have a feeling black should be okay and probably... Oh no, he did take. I was just going to say, probably he should be more humble and go bishop takes d2, but he did take on f1, knight takes f1, on e6, knight takes f1, king takes f1, and yeah, I would expect c6. Very double-edged, but I don't think black is in trouble. We'll see. How's Vishy doing? I like Vichy's shirt. I think that's the shirt he's been wearing when he crushed people in Zurich last year. Maybe it's a Zurich shirt. I haven't seen him wear it that much since. Or I could be wrong, it's a new shirt. But I like it. It's a problem with being on camera. Normally you're told to wear unicolor shirts because everything else includes making the frame too blurry. It's a bit boring, so I envy him. Yeah, Vichy's finally gone a5 after Giri allowed him to do so for too many moves. I really don't understand it. Why not play a5 or b4 yourself? Because now after a5 this knight gets more of an outpost on c5, queen c2, knight c5, rook f1. Giri very worried about that soft spot on f2, but I don't think there was any danger. Queen goes back to d7. Now that white has spent 5 moves defending on the king side. Maybe he wants to go d5. Maybe he also wants to remove this knight, threatening the a4 pawn. I believe, Vichy solved his problems here, mainly because Giri did not grab that space that was on offer on the queen side. And now, I think Vichy is totally fine. Let's stick with Kramnik-Aronian. That's the most unbalanced position after Kramnik decided to give up that exchange, which I thought was too risky. But Vladimir Kramnik, over the last couple of years, he started playing more and more enterprisingly. He's always played great chess, of course, but he's not afraid of taking risks. If he feels it's a critical move, he's gonna do it. And he does have compensation. He does have the 2 bishops. He does have this pawn, which is still alive. Queen b3, queen b6 has been played. I do not think that white should exchange queens unless it's under very favorable circumstances. So I would expect him to keep queens on the board here. Go something like queen c4, tending to continue developing quickly by putting this bishop to e3. And I don't know. I would say that black is fine. It's full compensation, but no more. This pawn is well blockaded. Wherever I move king h8. Bishop e3, queen to c7. I do not think black is in trouble here, but kudos to Kramnik for, making this a lot more complex than it would have been after any capture on d2. Bishop takes d5. Queen c4 is on the board. What's Nakamura up to? Deep thought, it looks like. After short castles, he hasn't made up his mind. If he wants to take on e5, if he wants to go rook c8, if he wants to go long castles, maybe he's thinking about even crazier moves like h5. Not that crazy really, just attacking the white king and adding to the mess that's already on the board. I like Nakamura's opening treatment and the position you get from it. Aronian's play king h8, that's the move you play instinctively, just getting out of this diagonal, so nothing too bad can happen. That's what we're looking at. Bishop e3, queen c7. When white has to decide how he wants to generate play. Does he want to try to push his h-pawn to unsettle this knight? Don't think that's a good idea just yet, because the knight can jump into e5. Does he want to go b4 to create some play on the queen side with b5? Also not sure about it, because once again there is this counterplay with knight to e5, which probably you don't want. You don't want this very nicely placed knight on d3 exchanged. So having said all that, what should white do? Bishop d4 looks natural because it stops knight e5, but it allows bishop to f6, and once again exchanges is nothing we really want. I don't know, it's too tough for me. I just had this session with Artur Yusupov on prophylactic thinking. Try to figure out what your opponent wants to do and then make an active move to stop him from doing that. It's a video series we're gonna publish soon, but I'm still not smart enough to come up with an active move here that stops knight e5. I can think of passive moves that do it, but they don't make a lot of sense, like queen c3, bishop f6, bishop d4, also bishop f6. Maybe something like rook d1, when after knight e5 at least one can take and go rook to d7. But rook d1, if black just goes rook a d8, we still have the same problem. No, I can't spot anything I like for white, actually. And Kramnik came up with a drastic measure. Not that hard to find actually. I detected the pawn, but I didn't even think of f4, stopping this knight from jumping here. There you go, Vladimir Kramnik has taken his lessons in prophylactic thinking. He knows how to apply them. He just takes the square away. f4, nice move. I'm a bit annoyed I didn't think of that. Should really have thought of that. Ambitious pawn is waiting for his Peter Svidler mug. Svidler has been signing lots of mugs, so I'm sure you're gonna get it soon. If you haven't already, I've seen lots of Peter Svidler signed mugs around the office, and we're not planning to keep all of them. Even though I might keep one, you never know, like what they're worth in the future. Should Svidler, our boy, win the candidates, I'm of course rooting for him, then these mugs will go up in value. But he has to deal with quite a few mean muggers in that candidates tournament, 4 of them playing here, and 2 of them we can see on camera. The defending candidates champion, if that's a title, Vishy Anand, against Anish Giri, the youngest participant, the 21-year-old, who's been solid as a rock against the strongest opposition. In the Grand Chess Tour, he scored +5 out of 27 games, didn't lose a single game, won 5 against the world's best players. So Giri always a force to be reckoned with. The question in Giri's case is, can he put together enough wins to win a tournament like the candidates? No one doubts he can score a plus score, but it's 14 rounds, and can he really do that much damage to finish first? Because first is what really matters to all these guys. That earns you the right to play a match against Magnus Carlsen. So obviously financially it helps because the World Championship match, there's a lot of money at stake, and also that's the goal. They want to become world champion. The odd man out in the candidates tournament is Vladimir Kramnik, who we see here playing against Levon Aronian. Aronian did get the wild card. A lot of people were thinking Kramnik might get it, especially when it was announced the tournament was in Moscow. But it is backed by an Armenian group, as far as I'm informed, and they chose the Armenian Levon Aronian as the wild card. Both of these guys, of course, very deserving. Levon Aronian coming fresh off a win in the super tournament that is the Sinkfield Cup. But Kramnik, who's the current number 2 in the live ratings, got a bit unlucky with the period when the rating qualifiers were determined, so he was out because his average rating over the 12 months at the time of choosing was lower than Topalov's and Giri's. Therefore, yeah, Kramnik, the biggest name to miss this year's candidates. Let's see how their position is after f4, which, yeah, was a great move, stopping 95. Very annoyed I didn't think of it. Rook a8 and rook c1. Now it's a little harder for black to free himself because his knight is a bit clumsy, and Kramnik can start playing on the queen side with b4, a4. Probably Levon should regroup, put his bishop on the long diagonal, clear this square for the knight. I don't know, I think I'll change my opinion. Earlier I said I'd rather have black. Now I'd rather have white, because it's tougher for black to maneuver. Well, the white position is easier to play. b4, a4, b5, generate some weaknesses, look for opportunities to jump around with the knight, maybe to d7. Well, black has to be very precise. Oh, we have big developments in Shirov Nakamura. How did that happen so fast? Nakamura did go h5, not holding back here. Knight to a4 and queen to d8. This pawn is on pre, so Shirov has to do something drastic. And he did. He took on f6, bishop takes, and knight to c5, ignoring that the pawn is on pre. H takes g, H takes g. You've asked for fire on board, you got it. It's a total mess of the position. Nakamura decides against grabbing that pawn because after king h1 he's probably worried his pieces could be a little too uncoordinated, even though it doesn't look bad. But instead he's played b6, hitting this knight and more or less forcing it to exchange itself for the quote-unquote black bad bishop, the bishop on d7, the passive light square bishop. Knight takes d7, queen takes d7. Now the pawn is still on priest, it's not easy to defend. And I still like black's position, even though maybe he could have gotten even more out of it, but this still looks unpleasant for Shirov. If if you try to defend the pawn, let's say knight h2, then the black pieces just swarm into the white position, and I think it's too passive. So instead of knight h2, probably Shirov has to, give up that pawn. That's what he's done. He's played king h1, offering it. But Nakamura has politely declined the offer, played rook c8, activating his last piece. And now Shirov has the chance to defend the pawn with rook g1, or he can keep sacrificing it and try to find a more useful move, even though I can't suggest one, like rook c2 maybe. Yeah, doesn't look too bad. Rook takes, queen takes. If rook takes g4, there's probably tactics with knight e5. Now that rook g4 is no longer check. Hitting the queen and the rook, let's say bishop e5, bishop g4, and all of a sudden white doesn't exchange up, so you don't want that to happen. Yeah, rook c2 has been played. I think Shirov might be kind of back in the game. Maybe Nakamura should have kept his bishop. It's an ugly bishop, but still does his job protecting the weakness on e6, and in the future it could very well land on g4. So Shirov hanging around out of the woods for now. Giri against Anand. After rook f1, queen d7, Giri went b3, trying to keep this a4 pawn protected. Vishy played knight e7, knight c4, b5, forcing the issue, leading to some exchanges on the queen side. A takes, b is forced, queen takes. This pawn was under attack, so he defends it. Knight goes back to c6 now that the queen has been activated over here. Knight cd2, once again defending this pawn. Rook a b8 and d4, trying to chase this knight away, which will happen. I'm not sure. Probably black should not exchange here, because after, let's say, takes, knight d7, all of a sudden white could use the newly opened c file to fish for new targets. Go rook c1. So I don't think you should do that. I think you should just retreat to d7, keep the c file closed, and we still have a roughly equal maneuvering position. Overthinking that verdict, but no, I still agree with me. I believe it is more or less equal. White has this weakness, which he's not going to lose, but it sort of ties him down from activating too many of his pieces. Well, black, he has these long-term weaknesses on e5 and e6, but there's no real way for white to attack them. And a wise man once said, a weakness that can't be attacked is not a weakness. Not sure which wise man said that, but someone said it. And he was probably right. If you can't attack it, why would it be weak? I can't see how to attack it. Yeah, Vishy's played knight d7, and the maneuvering continues. Let's go back to Kramnik Aronia, and that's the game with the material unbalance. Aronia has gone for this bishop f6 move, clearing the e7 square for the knight, and it's Kramnik's time. I'm not sure if it's Kramnik's time. It's Kramnik's turn to come up with a plan. The obvious plan to my mind is b4 to go b5. Yeah. That looks very, very logical. Let's see if Kramnik has something else in mind. I don't think you want to even dream about capturing the pawn on a7 after b6. This bishop is not going to stay with us for very long. Queen a6, rook a8. And he's gone. Let's say bishop takes b6, queen to b8, staying in touch with it. Now the queen has to go somewhere, and it's just being picked up. So don't take on a7. I don't think Kramnik is thinking about it, just to illustrate. I'm being told I appear much taller in real life than on camera. Yeah, what can I say? I don't know. This is not my real frame. I am taller in real life. I'm also sitting. If I stand up, I become a lot taller. Alexei Shirov, another tall guy. Probably more or less my height. I'm around 193. I think Shirov is my height. And Kramnik is taller than me. Kramnik is really, really tall. Let's see how Shirov is doing. Why are they playing so quickly? They're going through all these critical decisions at lightning speed. Knight d6, knight e5 blitzed out. Both sides cool with exchanging this pair of minor pieces. Bishop takes e5, d takes e, and knight to e4. Trying to figure out who's better and why. What I have figured out is we can't kick this knight away because it would have a very nice square here. But I was wondering if white can just go bishop d3. When if this knight has to go somewhere, now this would be ridiculous, but just to show f4, white would have a dream position. You could go to c5 though, which is a little more challenging. Now f4 doesn't really work because then you capture the rook, and none of this has happened. Shirov instead of bishop d3 has decided to bring his king back to the g file. Wow, king g2, brazenly stepping into the line of fire. But he wants to avoid any bad surprises with knight g3 check, and maybe also wants to use his king to stop h3 check. Steinitz style, the king is a strong piece that can take care of itself. Let's see if that backfires. King g2, Nakamura deliberately retreated his knight, but it's not really a retreat, it's such a nice outpost on c5 from where it blocks the c file, prepares the march of the penguin on d5. Can go to d4, threatening d3. I still like Nakamura's position better. I'm not sure if that's an objectively fair assessment, but it just feels like it's easier to play. However, if white gets time, let's say, to prepare a pawn march without being bothered, I think he'd be in good shape. But I have a feeling that there is time to bother him along the way. We shall see. And what's going on? Did Kramnik take on a7? Whenever I say that's a move you don't want to play under any circumstances, he does it. But he's prepared it by going queen to b4, keeping an eye on b6, so now bishop takes a7 might be an idea. Still a strange move, b4 looks so normal. And rook fe8, now he did take, his point being that b6 no longer possible because of bishop takes b6, and probably after rook takes e6 there is bishop b6 picking up material. Very greedy approach by Kramnik. He just wanted to get another pawn for the exchange to feel a bit better about himself. Can black do this? Hit the bishop. It's probably going to go to b6. And now queen somewhere. Not the prettiest square. Let's say here with a double attack against these two pawns. I don't know, it looks alright for black, doesn't it? Let's say knight c5, for example. Rook takes a2. I have a feeling black is okay. And yeah, that doesn't seem to be a good alternative to rook a8, because yeah, rook e6, bishop b6 is a problem, bishop b6 is a threat against most moves. Queen e7 or something like that might be possible, but then white could exchange and try to hang on to this pawn with knight c5 or even bishop h3. So I don't expect any of that to happen. I would expect Levon to go rook a8 when, once again, I think he's in good shape. But this game is gonna stay interesting. All kinds of twists and turns are still entirely possible. Should white ever manage to get to this pawn by going bishop h3, bishop takes f5? I don't know. But I dislike this idea of queen b4 followed by bishop a7. It feels like white should have used the time to, the little time he had before this pawn becomes under fire, to open the position up. Who do we have on camera? We have Mr. Shirov and Mr. Nakamura weighing their options. Rook h1 played, targeting this pawn. Can I go d4? I really want to go d4, and if rook h4, then d3 with a double attack. So that's probably not going to happen. White might answer with, is this a move? Threatening this. Then black can take here, and oof. It's a total mess, which both players should enjoy. They excel at calculating, they excel at messes. And Shirov should enjoy it because I think he was in real trouble earlier out of the opening, while now who's better and why is a question I find very tough to answer. Queen e7 has been played. Nakamura did not want to open this long diagonal by playing d4. Can white go f4? I really would like to go f4 just to hint at this f5, even though it's It's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Just to stabilize, f4, bishop f3, king h3. If all these moves can happen without any accidents, I think white is doing quite well now. Yeah, I like it for white. It feels easier to play. King goes to h3, the rook goes to f1, and one day or another we are going to get in f5. A lot of height discussion. I don't know how tall Nakamura is. Like, I guess a little shorter than 180. He's not short. What's that in your crazy non-metric system? Like 5'9", 5'10", I would guess. Yeah, Shirov is tall. He's 6'3", I would guess. Vichy is, I don't know. Vichy, I guess he's a bit taller than 180. Kramnik is the tallest of these guys. He's taller than me. So in US lingo, I guess he's 6'5", 6'6". In our lingo, I believe he's close to 2 meters, like 196 maybe, not sure. He's really, really tall. Peter Heine is very tall. The German Grandmaster Sebastian Siebrecht is also very tall. I believe that's the tallest Grandmasters, but Kramnik is up there. Giri is not very tall. Giri doesn't seem to weigh very much either. That's the question I'm more curious about. He's not like short or anything. I would guess he's 175, maybe a bit more. But he probably has the most rating points per kilo. I'm not sure. Caruana also, but Caruana has been putting on a lot of muscle recently, so I would guess he's heavier than Giri now, and therefore has less rating per kilo because they have pretty much the same rating. They keep taking turns in the top 10, but they're always within like 5-10 rating points. Nakamura in deep thought here. After, what did Shirov play? Did he play anything? No, Shirov didn't do anything yet after queen e7. Aronian, I'm not sure. He's not very tall. I would guess like, I'll be so wrong on all this. 172, 73. In basketball, he plays point guard. Let's put it that way. But yeah, Levon, I'm not very good at the US system. 5'7", something like somewhere in that neighborhood. But yeah, most super grandmasters aren't very tall. Like Kramnik, Shirov are the exception. But most of the other guys, Caruana, Giri, Nakamura, Aronian, not that tall. Magnus Carlsen, how tall is Magnus? Like, I guess around 180 as well, around 5'10". Which, yeah, is pretty average. Oh, someone says Hu Yifan is most rating per kilo. I'm not sure. Like, I think it's impolite to discuss Hu Yifan's weight, but I'm not sure if she can beat Giri in a most rating per kilo competition. People are saying Aronian is less than 170. I don't think so, no. Could be, but no, I would take the over on the 170 proposition. Can't you look that up? Whenever I Google basketball players, it gives you the height immediately. Probably less of a factor with chess players. What we can establish is that Kramnik is by far the tallest in the field. Shirov also a tall guy. All the others, I think, average height or slightly below that. No, it doesn't work the other way around. It's not who has the most kilos per rating point. Because then someone who doesn't play chess is probably a big favorite. So it has to be most rating points per kilo. No, Magnus not short. By normal standards, he's probably, now since people are so tall, especially Scandinavians, it's very slightly below average in those countries. But no, he's like 180, which I believe is pretty much the definition of average. And people are very convinced that Levon is below 170. I really don't think so. Is he that small? Nah. I really don't think so. But he is smallish. When you play basketball, yeah, I think he might be the smallest guy on the court. I think he's smaller than MVL and those guys. I'm not very good at basketball, but I'm I am tallish, so when I was on the same team with Alexander Grisho when we played in Norway chess, we were kind of crushing these fools by just getting every rebound, dominating the boards. Magnus probably the biggest athlete of the guys we played with, but in basketball, height fortunately matters. I don't know. I think Peter Heine is very, very dominant force in those games because he's big and heavy and you can't move him below the basket, but he wasn't there when I played. I haven't seen Kramnik or Shirov, who are also tall guys, playing there. Anyway, let's get back to a bit of chess. I'm getting carried away here. Bishop takes a7, rook a8 has been played by Aronian. Bishop b6, queen c8, as expected. Double attack against these pawns. And Kramnik played a nice move, which once again I missed. Defending both these pawns, bishop d5, using the fact that this is a pin. Or this is a pin, rather. Still, can't black keep attacking this guy and pick it up when one pawn for the exchange is not a big material disadvantage. But if black gets rid of the e6 pawn, I think only black can be better. So Aronian should be quite satisfied with the current state of events. Giri Vichy is sort of a boring position. Giri, yeah. They've exchanged one pair of knights after d4. He did take. Why didn't he? I thought he played knight d7. I must have misseen it. ed, and he didn't go cd. Maybe just like knight a6, knight b4. I don't know. cd looked critical, but Giri took with the knight, exchanging a pair of knights, takes, and knight to d7. Why can't we take? I don't understand anything. I have a feeling this is a transmission error. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because here you could just take the pawn, and I thought I saw on the board earlier that Giri played. The Vichy played knight d7 first. So I'm going to assume the current position is correct, but they reached it with a different move order, maybe after d4. He started with knight d7. I don't know, I'm confused, but I'm going to have to take it for what it's worth that this is the position on the board, queen b6, knight f3, which looks equal. I'll have a look at the camera, should it come up again. But the camera seems to be hanging out in the Shirov Nakamura game, so let's have a look at that one. That's such a weird position. Black has a good knight. Both sides have sort of weak kings, even though the white king now is not in such big amount of trouble. Neither is the black king, but long term, should the position ever open up, let's say black goes d4 or white goes f4, f5, both of these kings will play a major role, and king safety could very well decide the outcome. Shirov played queen c1, which is a move that's above my head. Maybe wants to put the queen here, or he wants to, he probably wants to go all the way to h6 to target the h4 pawn. Interesting maneuver, looking for inroads into the black position. Nakamura taking his time now what to do. The idea of playing d4 is always there to open this diagonal, but it's very double-edged because it also gives the bishop the diagonal. I don't know. This is gonna heat up. In the Gelfand Morozevich game, Morozevich did not go for this option I was discussing with knight g4, instead developed normally, but I believe that white with a space advantage is doing very well here. Some maneuvering back and forth. Queen c1 seems to be very en vogue, just played by Shirov as well. Knight e5, bishop e3 back, and f6, but it's not a pretty setup either. f4 on the board, and Morozevich once again has a decision. Can he go knight g4, or does he have to retreat? Why not knight g4? Now if white has to take, it's a different story, because this bishop can no longer be chased away with f3, so that would just be a mistake. Therefore, I believe white would have to go here, and then one has to evaluate what's going on here, because it's a pawn. White certainly has compensation for it, but still, I'd be tempted to take it. I like pawns. We'll see how that one develops. Big decision now for Mr. Morozevich, because yeah, whoever loses this game loses the match, and I'm not sure if there's money at stake, but there's certainly bragging rights and rapid rating at stake. So both of these guys seem to be extremely focused. Gelfand might look like he's asleep, but I can assure you he's not. Hearing there's transmission errors on every board, that'd be unfortunate. And we'd have to focus more on the camera. Ah, yeah, the position in Giri against Vichy just, yeah, that looked wrong, as I've mentioned, and It looks like the knight went to a6, which makes more sense because knight d7 just dropped the c7 pawn. Knight a6, queen c3, queen b6. Still weird, because here knight c4 seems to pick up a pawn. But let's assume the position is correct now. I'd love to get a camera shot of that game to see what is really going on. We are stuck in the Morozevich position. That position seems to be correct, but I'm more interested in the other ones. Shirov, in the meantime, has placed his queen on e3 after Nakamura prevented this option of queen to h6 by playing rook h7. But that feels a bit passive. Rook h7, queen e3, now he's played queen g7. Wondering when Shirov's gonna pull the trigger and go f4. Just getting his pawns rolling. Maybe he dislikes it because it weakens the e4 square long term. But I still feel one day or another he should do that. Complicated position. I'm starting to slightly prefer white. I'm not sure if Nakamura's maneuvers, maybe it was the best he had. Maybe I overestimated his position earlier. But yeah, I'm starting to like white. The Giri Anand game, I'm still very unsure if anything that occurs on the board can be trusted. Sometimes with these DGT boards, one move is not placed on the exact square and it doesn't understand what's going on because, yeah, the position that says they have here after f4, e5, knight f3 looks great for black, no? Just e takes f4. So let's see if we can get a shot of that game. Now the cameraman seems to be a big Boris Gelfand fan. I don't blame him. Boris Gelfand, a lot of praise for his book that recently came out on quality chess. I really would like to get my hands on that one. But let's see if we can get a shot of the Giri Anand game because mysterious things are happening, but I'm not sure if we can trust it. E takes f4, g takes f4 and d5, nice move if it's the position, usual disclaimer here. E takes d5. Because all of a sudden the white pawn structure, which looked so nice and tidy earlier, is a mess of isolated pawns now. Even though white is a pawn up at the moment, it doesn't really matter if black, I don't know what you're supposed to do, but if black, whatever, plays a move like queen f6, so maybe check here first, targeting this guy, only black can be better, maybe significantly better. So if we can trust this position, once again, not sure, something was wrong earlier, then it's trouble for Giri, especially in a rapid setting, because to defend such a position with a weak king and with limited time, not saying it would be easy with a classical control, but against tricky Vichy in a rapid game is more or less impossible, I would say. What a comeback for Vichy, who must have been devastated after Gibraltar, where he lost all his rating in the Open tournament. If he manages to win his first two games here in Zurich, he likes it in Zurich, it seems like. He had a great event last year, won the classical leg of the tournament, then lost overall tournament victory only in the Armageddon against, or in the Blitz tiebreaker against Hikaru Nakamura, but had a great event, which started in these fast-paced times we tend to forget, but it started a great first half of the year for Vichy in 2015, where he had a great tournament in Shamkir, had a great Norway chess, was number 2 in the world at the year's halfway mark, and then had a weaker second half of 2015. Maybe he's more of a fall guy than of an... No, more of a spring guy than of an autumn guy. I was going to say more of an autumn than of a fall guy, but that's kind of the same season, isn't it? Maybe he does like the spring better. Anyway, there we see a bit of the position, but we mainly see Vichy's back, so I can't fully figure out what's going on there. Anish doesn't look happy though, so that's more of an indicator, but no, still haven't seen it. Let's go to Mr. Levon Aronian, the guy who got the wild card, where Vladimir Kramnik was also very much in the conversation for the candidates tournament. They face off here. Aronian managed to get rid of the e6 thorn in his flesh. Kramnik tried to activate his position to the max in the meantime. But now Aronian has a rook against a bishop and a pawn, which is a small material advantage. No particular weaknesses in his position. So I would say he's a bit better here, and Kramnik is fighting for a draw. This knight just returned to f8, can come to d7, cover these squares. I don't really see a lot of compensation. And Vladimir Kramnik might be regretting his admirable but very double-edged decision earlier to sacrifice the exchange by going d takes e6. In the Vichy game, if the position is correct, once again, Vichy is seriously better, but can it be trusted? Keep an eye on the camera if the board comes up, if you guys can tell that it is the position or not the position. Kramnik Aronian, Kramnik just went knight c5, if my eyes can be trusted. I was wondering about knight d7, bishop e6, but then I think I spotted that it can just be taken. Taken, and taking here. That's too many takens, as some people have said about Liam Neeson as well. So yeah, this doesn't work. Therefore, after knight d7, Kramnik would have to take, I guess. I should use a different word. Queen takes d7. And yeah, my assessment still stands. The position is clarified. Black is a little better, but it's going to be very hard to convert this advantage against a pair of bishops. While Nakamura is coming up with some sneaky maneuvers after queen g7, Shirov still refrains from playing f4, goes rook c1, maybe he wants to hint at this, or maybe just wants to stop the knight from moving away from c5. Queen to f8, a4, maybe that's his idea, to go a5 and open a new front, the a file. But Nakamura uses his time not idling either, plays rook f7, introducing ideas like rook to f4 or h3 check to distract the white king from the f2 pawn. And all of a sudden there's serious counterplay. This could escalate very quickly. There we see Kramnik taking on d7, and yeah, that's the position in exchange down. He has to defend. But yeah, we need a better angle on the Vichy-Anish game to confirm, even though there have been a lot of legal and sensible moves made after this confusion a while earlier. So my gut feeling is this probably is the position they have on the board. There we are. Let's have a look. Yeah, it looks very much like that position. It is a position, and that means things have gone seriously wrong for Anish. Somewhere around here, everything was normal. You could argue if it's equal or white is slightly better. Rook c1, rook f7, knight d2, and I think knight d2 already allowed Vichy to jump into action with rook f8 targeting this f2 pawn, and Anish, who earlier had been very careful to defend it, here decides to push it, goes f4, probably should have played rook f1. After f4 he gets hit with his move e5. And all of a sudden things aren't so easy. This rook is unprotected, so fe, well, doesn't work because of rook f2 check. Oh, I should try to make legal moves. If rook f2 was legal, that would be a good move. But d5, preparing it is probably a wiser idea. ed and now rook f2. Maybe that's what he missed. Whereas de could also be a good move. But d5, I think, is the problem. Maybe that's the key tactic that Anish missed. E takes d5. Now this diagonal is blocked. And rook f2 check. Therefore you can't go d5 because the rook is hanging. And that's why Anish had to say goodbye to some pawns. Knight f3, e takes f, g takes f. And Vichy threw in d5 once again to get rid of this pin and to ruin the white structure. E takes d, queen d6, blocking the d pawn and targeting it. Knight e5, rook f4, king to g1. And here Vichy is very seriously better because of the weak white king and the very weak white pawn formation. King g1, he's played king h7, just getting out of this diagonal, using the fact that his knight controls both these squares from where he could get checked on the other diagonal. Anish played rook g3, and now what should you do, Mr. Vichy? I don't know. Let's have a look. Rook a5 is being yelled out in the chat. Looks like a perfectly good move, blocking this diagonal, keeping an eye on the knight. making it possible to come here. Also knight takes d5 is in the air. Why can't you take immediately? Then there's troubles with the check. Even though even this looks possible, but probably you don't want to allow this check, because now the king has to return to the danger zone, and maybe there is some knight g6s, even though I don't think it works here just yet. So the sharp, but Vichy is clearly the one pulling the shots here because, well, of his structural advantage and his safer king. What's the clock situation? 12 minutes for Vichy, 12 minutes for Mr. Geary. More or less equal. And yeah, Geary can't be very happy with his event so far. Got crushed in the blitz. Did not manage to convert a very good position in the first round against Nakamura. Now he's under tremendous trouble against Vichy Anand. In tremendous trouble, under tremendous pressure. And I expect Vichy to win that game. Nakamura's position still keeps confusing me. I'm confused Shirov didn't seize a chance earlier to play f4. Now Nakamura has managed to establish a rook here. Can white go a5, try to open up this position? Or is that too risky? Could be too risky. This looks like a very sneaky move, threatening a check here and using that there's many things on this long diagonal. Also, in some lines, preparing h3 check. And let's not forget the d-pawn. While Nakamura has been reluctant to move it, it is still allowed to be pushed forward at any moment. So very sharp position, but I like the trend for Nakamura over the first couple. I should try to speak English sentences that make a bit of sense. I like the trend for Nakamura in the last couple of moves. Over the first couple of moves. I also like the trend for Vichy Anand. Don't like the trend for Anish Giri or the trend that manages Fabiano Caruana, but that's a different topic here after rook g3. Rook f5, the computer move. I'm not sure how obvious that move is because you kind of want to keep an eye on the g6 square. But here after rook g6, the point is that now black can go queen takes e5, d takes e5, rook takes c4. And after any recapture on c4, black takes on g6 and emerges a piece up. So hard to suggest an active move here for white. Knight g6 is probably suicide because of some trickery. I don't know, if rook f1 or rook takes d4. Yeah, this looks good. Rook f1, rook takes, queen takes g3. And black just wins. It's probably mate, but you could also pick up this knight. So yeah, this is a pretty move, but very, very hard to come up with. It doesn't look so natural. Still, it's far from being the only move. Like most sensible moves do strike me as good for black. Knight takes d5 works. Maybe you could even play a move like queen f6. Oh no, I shouldn't. Shouldn't blunder too much. Queen f6, knight d7. And Vichy's played rook a f5, just as I said. This is a tough move to make. The tiger from Madras, even though I don't think we can call him that anymore because the city is called Chennai now. So, people don't say the tiger from Chennai, right? I haven't heard that. Anyway, Anand found rook f5. Anand's in good shape. Really showing us that Gibraltar was an accident. Don't write him off for the candidates just yet. He's poised to start with 2 out of 2 here, defeating Levan Aronian, and now Anish Giri looks very much in play. And yeah, that'd be very impressive. 2 of the more solid guys in the circuit. Anish Giri, don't think he loses a lot of white games. Vladimir Kramnik, in the meantime, has had to or has agreed to exchange queens. Material balance is still the same. He's an exchange down, he has a pawn for it and the 2 bishops, so I think his position is defendable, but it's not going to be fun, and it's black that's playing for a win here. How did Morozevic's knight end up on h6? He didn't go knight g4, he went knight f7, he decided to keep maneuvering, but now after bishop f3, white has to be a little better. A lot of going back and forth with the pieces, but white does control the center and has a space advantage, so if in all this maneuvering black doesn't achieve any goals or doesn't create any targets, he will end up in trouble sooner or later. Maybe it's time to just get this bishop out of the way to stop any tricks along the e-file. Yeah, Gelfand has a good position. And whoa, what's going on in Shirov Nakamura? Shirov took on c5. Whoa, why? Queen c5 doesn't work because the rook on f4 is hanging, but bc5, which was blitzed out, does work. And I don't get it. Isn't black just winning? a5 has been played. That's probably his idea to generate a passed pawn here. But how can this work? Let's say rook b4, trying to stop this. If b6 just takes a6. Any move really. King d7, king d7 looks good. a7. Maybe there is some play, but I just don't believe it works at all. I was gonna go here, but then I got scared because of queen h6. And takes queen g7, picking up the queen. Still, this just can't work. It's a full exchange and black has two passed pawns. Either it's a stroke of genius by Shirov or he underestimated his position, was a little desperate after this rook got here, threatening to take this, maybe some ideas with queen h6, and he thought, you know what, this knight is bothering me, let's take it and hope for the best. But the position they have now, I'm missing all the action here, bc, a5, Nakamura threw in h3 check, little tactic because queen h3 doesn't work. Due to queen h6 check, the king has to step into the g-file and rook takes g4 check, winning. Therefore, king g3 had to be played, and now h2, or king g3 didn't have to be played. It looks like the blunder actually, because now h2, based on the same tactic, if you take queen h6, king has to enter the g-file and rook g4 decides, no matter where the king goes. This is game over, winning the queen. So it looks like that escalated quickly indeed. King g3, probably the decisive mistake, probably the king had to stay in front of the h-pawn, even this position, if you go rook b4 now, I think is lost for white, so Shirov just panicked with rook takes c5, didn't have to. And yeah, this is over. h2, nice little trick by Nakamura, of course he does not miss a tactical chance like that. As mentioned, you can't take, and if you have to go, whatever, queen c1 to stop h1 queen, it's just hopeless. And that's why he resigned. There we see handshake. Nakamura quick to put the kings on d4, e5, which is DGT board lingo for black has won, and therefore in our little system here we see Nakamura won, Shirov lost. Quick end for Alexei Shirov, and he's gonna be disappointed with that. I'm not sure. Yeah, as I've mentioned earlier, I think he should have taken one of these chances to play f4, grab some space, solidify his pawn formation. And after he allowed this rook f7, rook f4, his position was already tough to play. The computer still says nothing's going on, a5 or rook h1 or any move and equality, but it feels very hard to play with this intruder in your camp. And therefore Shirov tried this, but it just was bound to fail. It's clear exchange. And black has too many passed pawns, so it ended quickly. Let's see how Mr. Giri and Mr. Anand are doing. Everybody in the chess world calls him Vishy. He explained to me once that it's both Mr. Anand and Anand, so it's the formal form and the family form, right? Well, Vishwanathan is his father's name. Still haven't fully figured it out, but I believe that is correct. But people just call him Vishy around chess for ages. Rook to g4, queen to f6. I think he's more or less winning. It's just too bad a king. You can't defend stuff like that. Rook takes, queen g5 is in the air. These pawns are still very weak. Giri is a very resilient defender, but in a rapid game, you're just so likely to blunder something because as the attacker, you can afford to make an inaccurate move. Whatever you play h5 next move, your position is still better. But as a defender, you make one small mistake and the game is over. And there's so many tricks. I just show one trick. Queen e2, for example, looks like a very natural move. And there's rook takes d4. rook takes d4 and queen g5 check, and all of a sudden this rook drops and black is a healthy pawn up with a winning position. So yeah, I think it's just an untenable situation for the young Dutchman with Nepalese and Russian roots, born in St. Petersburg. Yeah, what a comeback by Vichy. He must be, I don't know if he's getting tired of it, but he's stuck in this circle. Like, people are writing him off after Gibraltar, or last year after some subpar results. Then he wins the candidates, and then he loses the match against Magnus, and then he has a huge comeback in the first half of 2015. Never write off class like Vichy Anand. Rook takes f4, rook takes f4 on the board. Just gotta ask any of these guys, like Svidler was here for doing the live commentary, what tremendous respect they have for Vichy's playing strength. Or Grishuk, he said to all of the people he's faced, Vichy is by far the toughest. He can play. And I believe people are taking him very, very seriously in the candidates event as well. Obviously, they're taking everyone seriously, but last year there was a bit of thought, nah, it's very unlikely Vichy's gonna win this. This year, no such thing. Giri is being his resilient self, has managed to exchange a pair of rooks. Now he's played rook f1. Even the knight endgame is probably winning. I'm not sure winning might be strong. It's very good for black because of the healthy extra pawn. I actually think it is winning. If knight c6 or knight c4 targeting this guy, then what? Black goes knight f4, takes this pawn. If h4, you just bring the king. I don't think black has to go for this, and probably shouldn't because the position is just so good. But just to illustrate that even the pure endgame picking up the pawn does look pretty good. Vichy's played queen g5 check. And king h1, what does he want to do? There's more tricks. Queen g3, and if takes, then you have this little Zwischenschach. King g1, queen g3, and now you take the rook. King h1, queen takes f4. White is still suffering from the fact that he can't give a check on this diagonal, which he would really like to do, but this knight controls both these squares. Here, after queen takes c7, let's say queen e4 check, followed by queen d5 or queen d4. Once again, black is very close to winning. Therefore, Giri played king h2, not allowing queen g3. But the king on h2 looks so exposed. Vichy once again could, I was going to say, could try to grab pawns with, let's say, takes and knight takes d5 with a position that is close to winning. Or he could be even more ambitious, try something like rook e4, playing for checkmate. More double-edged, but also looks very, very difficult for white. Let's see which one he chooses, but yeah, Giri needs a miracle to stay in this game. Vladimir Kramnik doesn't quite need a miracle, but he has a tough defensive task. However, has he tricked Levon Aronian? I see bishop landing on d8 after rook a8. And I was getting curious because of rook e6, there's bishop b3 winning the material back. This rook can't stay connected to this bishop. Well, if rook f7, I was looking for a trick, but I guess there is no such thing. Bishop b3, rook f8, and now black keeps his material. Rook f7, white should probably maintain the status quo. Put this bishop somewhere, play a5, and same as before. Black is a little better, but it's very hard to convert this into a win against these agile bishops, as long as black does manage to exchange these bishops for each other, which Kramnik will never allow. And Vichy's going for it. He's gone rook to e4 indeed. Not satisfied with picking up the pawn. He wants blood. He wants to checkmate Anish with queen d2, rook e2, which, yeah, looks pretty hard to stop. Giri, in a desperate situation, needs all his tenacity to hang around, but I just think his position is too bad, because even if he manages to not get checkmated, all the endgames are terrible for him. Like stuff like this, takes. It's also pretty much lost. He's losing this pawn. No, it doesn't look good for Vichy Anand. We're going to check back in with Boris Gelfand and Alexander Morozevich and their two-game rapid match. Gelfand has managed to achieve an advantage because these pieces are a little clumsy. The a4 pawn is up for grabs. Easiest thing to do is probably just to grab this pawn. When conversion is by no means easy, white has an extra pawn, but there's opposite color bishops and it's doubled, wherever rook e3 or any move. But Gelfand is better and he can keep pressing for victory in their mini-match. Let's see what Anish has come up with. He's played knight f3. And yeah, I believe we're getting closer to curtains. That's what I was mentioning earlier. It's just impossible to defend such a position. Not only objectively, but especially with little time and such active black pieces. Vishy just keeps activating and activating to the max. Rook to e3, now queen e4, knight takes d5. White is just horribly passive. This knight can't move because a big check on g3 would decide the issue immediately. It's just a very frustrating position to play with white. I can't even think of a sensible move. No, I think it's just over. Let's say rook f2, then this knight jumps here, knight d3, and it's already a matter of taste how you want to finish the game. Queen e4, increasing the pressure looks strongest. You could take here, but then you gotta be a little careful that you're actually winning after, I don't know, does this make sense? I think black is still winning. I was trying to show a way to bungle it, but it's probably still winning for black. This rook ending, yeah, it is. Now Vishy's gonna win that one. I'd be very surprised if he didn't. What happened in Kramnik-Aronian? I'm very confused by that game. Bishop d8, rook f7, bishop b3. Why didn't he go back? That's just strange. Aronian, I think, decided to simplify to a draw to an opposite color bishop endgame here, which should be a draw similar to the Shirov-Kramnik game we've seen earlier. Yeah, it is a draw, but why do that? Why not just keep playing with the exchange up? He probably thought he wasn't better and he didn't like his rook being so passive. Maybe he was worried about the rook coming here. Yeah, I guess that's it. Still very surprised by that decision. I still believe only black can be better here. But yeah, that's going to end in a draw now. Aronian's decided he's not better, he's going to simplify. And it's another one of those opposite color bishop endgames, even though white is a pawn up. It is pretty much a dead draw. King f4, king f6, then bishop d6, forcing it back. And exchange whatever pawns intend to cross the fourth rank. So this is a dead draw. Kara Nakamura's already won. Vishy Anand is well on his way to start with 2 wins, which would translate into 4 out of 4, because in this tournament you get 2 points for a win in the rapid section and then 1 point for a win in the blitz section, which follows on Monday. So yeah, Vishy in great shape so far. Already yesterday in the blitz he was in good shape, won that last game against Nakamura to ensure the extra whites. The top 3 finisher in the blitz, they get 3 whites in this rapid event, while the bottom 3 finishers get 3 blacks. And it looks like the curtains is approaching in the game. After rook e3, Anish tried queen c1, but ran into rook e2 check, king h1, and queen to g3, which is threatening a very nasty mate. Not only here, because that when we could parry with rook g1, but that runs into queen takes f3 check, which is also mate next move. There's one spike check if you want to give it. Looks like the game's already over. You could give this one spike check, queen b1, knight c2, and that is the end. Impressive display by Vishy Anand, cruising into, well, he already was in the sole lead, but into commanding lead now in the tournament, winning his first 2 games. Commanding is a bit strong, but he's in the lead. Nakamura has 1.5 out of 2, or, well, Vishy has 2 out of 2, or 4 out of 4. Nice performance by Vishy. Anish Giri is going to be disappointed, has not played well so far, didn't take his chances in the first game against Nakamura. Today he got crushed. Looks like Levan Aronian against Vladimir Kramnik has ended peacefully. That was a dead draw. And same procedure as first round. That leaves us with the match between Boris Gelfand and Alexander Morozevich slugging it out. If you want to see that game with computer analysis, you can also track it down on Chess24. My lovely feed and commentary is going to be embedded there. If you want to see player interviews from the guys who finished their games, you should switch to the German feed, where Grandmaster Yannick Pelletier and International Master Werner Hug are on site in Zurich. I'm sure they will find someone to talk to, and I believe they will do that in the common tongue, aka English. So check that out. I'm gonna stick around and have a look at the Gelfand Morozevich match. The cameraman is gonna be thrilled. He doesn't have to spend time on the other boards anymore, but he can focus on his favorite game, the game Gelfand Morozevich. That Gelfand just pushed his pawn up the board, went b4 with a bit of an outburst. So let's try to figure out what the overall situation is. Gelfand is a pawn up, which is always nice. It's opposite color bishops, which, should the material get reduced further, would significantly increase black's drawing chances. But with queens on the board, the story is a little different, and if white can manage to generate a bit of an attack here, the opposite colored bishops could actually work in his favor. If this bishop ever makes it here. For now, there is some direct questions. How do you parry the idea of b takes c5? Do you ignore it? Do you play something like queen e7? And then after b takes c5, you go away hoping to recapture it? Or do you take on b4, let's say a takes b, and I don't know, I was going to try b5, but it looks ugly. White just goes c5, knight c4, knight here, and this bishop is very much locked up once we get this pawn structure. So that's probably not a bright idea. Morozevich decided on a different move. He went rook a8. He decided to target the a3 pawn in reply to this bold attack on his c5 pawn. But now I think Gelfand can just take knight f7 and knight e4 and have his cake and eat it too. Defend the a3 and the c5 pawn while activating his knight, getting ready to jump into d6 should it ever be needed and should he be allowed to. This won't be easy. bc5 is on the board, and now white is up 2 pawns, which is significant, even though it's double pawns. Look at all the squares these two double pawns control. e5, d5, d6, e6. They get a whole bathtub in the center occupied, so this is gonna be very tough to defend for Alexander Morozevich. For those of you who are only interested in the rapid tournament, tomorrow there's more coming. It's 5 rounds total, same time tomorrow. 3 p.m. round number 3, 6 p.m. round number 4, and then on Monday, I don't know the time, my best guess is it's a bit earlier because there's a blitz tournament to follow, is round number 5. So a lot of chess to come. On Monday is also the blitz tournament, and I have a feeling I've marked too many squares in the center to provide a lot of educational value, so enough. What I'm trying to say is Boris Gelfand is much better because he has 2 extra pawns. And this bishop might look passive, but it could become sneaky good by jumping into h5, targeting this knight. For now, he has played knight e4, and Morozevich wanted to stop any queen d7 or knight d6 action when rook d8, also probably trying to exchange a bit of material, which would increase drawing chances with the opposite color bishops. But nothing really matters as long as this pawn stays alive. It just does such a good job restricting this bishop and this knight by controlling the d6 square. So I think Morozevich certainly has his work cut out for him here. And I think he's an underdog to survive this position. Queen c2 has been played, now queen b1, same story. Yeah, the point values are just for the purpose of this tournament. There's no official system. It's a private tournament. They can assign whatever points they want. In this one, they assigned 2 points to every score to every rapid game. So if you draw a rapid game, you get 1 point. If you win a rapid game, you win 2 points, and 1 point to every blitz game. So if you win a blitz game, you get 1 point. If you draw a blitz game, you get half a point. So the 5 rapid games carry twice as much value as the 5 blitz games. Not the blitz games from the opening ceremony, those only counted for the drawing of lots or for the color distribution in the rapid event, but the blitz games that are still to come in Monday's event. Hope I explained that well. I don't know. Let me try to explain the position they have on the board right now. Well, Morozevich took on d1 and went queen a5, still trying to go after these pawns. Can Gelfand keep them both? He could go a4, but then I was wondering if it is possible to take this dude. Still not a walk in the park, but probably the only chance. But there is no way to defend them both. I don't see it, at least. Queen b3 would not be a great idea because of queen e1 check. So Gelfand played knight d6, also very logical. What does he want after queen c5? I don't fully get it. He took on f7, but now this looks drawish. Now this bishop woke up, a3 is a target, the white king is a little open. I don't even think white is better anymore. No, knight d6 maybe wasn't so easy anymore. Maybe I overestimated white's position, but knight d6 looks like it really helps white's really helps black's defense. Queen c5, knight f7, king f7. Here, yeah, there's nothing for white. More moves have been made. Queen b1, b6, keeping that pawn alive, and queen to e4. Which is nice because it threatens checkmate on one. I was going to suggest queen f2 here, but after staring at the position for what felt like a couple minutes, I spotted that this would end the game and not peacefully, so we can't do that. Did he have to play b6? Maybe this was the time to go queen f2. Just to activate to the max, and if white takes here, king quietly steps back, and I believe black is too active for any trouble to come his way. b6, queen e4, now it's Gelfand who is more active, but it still feels like the game should end peacefully. Queen d6, c5, nice move. Oh, hang on, did he blunder this? Is this just winning? I think he blundered c5. He went queen d6, but after c5, you can't go bc5 because bishop c4 check wins the queen. The king doesn't have anywhere to go. And you can't go queen c5 because of queen e6. I think Morozevich just blundered. He's played queen e7, but now bishop c4 check seems to win the house. King e8 is forced. Queen takes c6 check. Would pick up a lot of material. Let's see what happened. But yeah, he blundered c5, he missed c5, and white is just winning. Queen c6, queen d7, queen e8 check, king e7, queen e4 check, king d8, centralizing the queen, so there's no unpleasant surprises with perpetual checks. And now just cb6, and all of a sudden Gelfand has eliminated the black queen side while creating a passed pawn on b6. This is just over. Always gotta be careful not to run into any attacks, but now this has to be winning, no question about it. Bishop c5, b7 on the board, king to c7. Still some work required, but white is winning here. I have zero doubts. 3 pawns are 3 pawns. Even a pure opposite color bishop endgame would probably be winning now, but I don't think it's gonna get there. Gelfand played bishop d5. I don't think black has time to take on a3 because very good arrow, because this b7 pawn would have a say. Can't spot an immediate win, but there has to be one. Nah, it's just winning. This pawn is too much of a force. Let's say queen c4 check, king b8. Any move, bishop c6, bishop f3. Somewhere out of the way. Let's go here so there's no checks on d1. Queen g8 check is a massive threat. Queen a6 is a threat. Nah, it's just game. Morozevich tried queen to b5. At the very least, threatening mate in 1, so that's always a nice thing to do. But Gelfand spotted that when king g2, bishop takes a3, and queen to e6, planning to give a big check on c8, followed by another big check on b8. Black probably has to go bishop d6 to stop that. Nah, but might as well resign. Bishop d6, queen c8, followed by b8 is just game over. And I believe the game has indeed ended. I see the player setting up the pieces. That escalated quickly. I should stop saying that, but it's an Anchorman reference, so I probably won't stop saying that. Very strange, because here the position, I'm pretty sure, is equal. If you just give up this pawn, even queen f2, trying to activate, I'd say queen b7, king g8. This is a threat, this is a threat. White even has to be careful. This might also be a threat, especially after black created luft. But instead, b6, queen to e4, which is already unpleasant. Threatening queen e6 checkmate, queen d6, and he missed the shot c5, opening the square for the bishop, which pretty much ends the issue. I'm not sure about interviews. There's not going to be any on this channel because I'm in Hamburg, but you can check the German channel with Yannick Pelletier and Werner Hug if some of the players showed up there. I honestly do not know, but click on the German flag and see if someone's talking there. I think I'm done talking for today in a minute, but let's briefly do a recap of the action. Vishy Anand, 4 out of 4 in the system, won his first 2 games, crushed Anish Giri after Anish. Well, first of all, as I mentioned, I was surprised Anish refused to grab space here on the queen side with b4 or a5. But still, the position remained more or less balanced after that. Then there was some confusion. I'm still not 100% sure about the transmission. But they got to this position, queen c3, queen b6, knight f3, knight b4, queen c4. Still equal. But here Anish chose the wrong moment to become active because f4 ran into e5. Easy move to miss because white, black is self-pinning, but this pin is more important. And the white position just collapsed. He can't keep all the pawns on the board. One key tactic being fe d5 to be followed up with rook to f2. Black is winning. And Vishy converted very smoothly. Kramnik-Aronian was a strange game, which I still don't fully understand. The critical moment was here after knight takes d2. Kramnik could have gone bishop d2 with roughly equal position. Instead, he went d6, sacrificing an exchange with a very complex situation. I think Aronian did pretty well to defend. I like this move f4, stopping knight e5, but Aronian maneuvered well, and I don't think was ever in danger. Therefore, I was a little surprised that Aronian, couple moves later, where was it here, after bishop d8, rook f7, bishop b3, decided to simplify it to a draw with rook takes d8, leading to a drawn opposite color bishop endgame, when he could have kept playing with rook f8. I'm not sure if he's better. My assessment is that only black can play for a win here, but Aronian probably didn't like his chances and didn't mind making a draw, especially after the way he lost the first game. He wanted to stabilize a little bit. Shirov Nakamura was another strange game. I didn't like Shirov's opening or the line he chose. He's been faithful to that line, but looked to me like he got under pressure very quickly. After that, it became extremely messy. A lot of fire on board. I still can't really point to what mistakes either player made or who was better when. It's too complicated. I would say it was roughly equal. Somewhere around here. I was surprised Shirov never pushed f4 this move or earlier. And after this rook f7, I think Shirov missed this maneuver. Rook f7, rook f4, f3, rook f4. Computer still says nothing's going on, rook h1 or a5, but it feels very unpleasant to play for white. And Shirov panicked, went rook takes c5, which just can't work. I don't know if it was a brain freeze and he thought he tricked him because only queen c5 is legal, or he thought after bc5, a5 is enough counterplay. But that didn't happen, and Nakamura immediately spotted this cute tactic h3 you can't take because of queen h6 check, followed by rook takes g4, winning the queen. And after king g3, h2, with the same theme, Shirov had to resign. So a lot of bloodshed, and I got my predictions wrong. I thought Kramnik was going to beat Aronian and Giri Anand would end on a draw. I got Nakamura, Shirov right. That's 33%. It's pretty good for me. Boris Gelfand wins his match against Alexander Morozevich by winning their second game after, I've just pointed out the key moment, after Morozevich blundered with queen d6, allowing this c5 breakthrough. That's it for today. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to see more of Zurich, the strongest rapid tournament, at the very least so far this year, and arguably of the whole year, I'm not sure what else is to come, tune in tomorrow, 2 more games with the new time control. They are promoting 40 minutes plus 10 seconds per move, starting at 3 p.m. round number 3, second round, or round number 4 that is, at 6 p.m. in my time zone, GMT +1. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your Saturday night. Embrace the night, people. Goodbye.